Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. My first video of today is going to be my beginning of the year book tag. I got these prompts from Larry, who is one of the booktubers that inspires me. I'll start with that prompt first, even though it's not in order. The other booktubers that inspire me are A Book Olive, Carrie Can Read, Cindy Pham, Destiny Sidwell, Diaries of Creativity, Gabby Reads, Haley Pham, Mariana Moore, Rachel Catherine, Sarah Caroli, and these lyrics and lines. A particular video that Sarah Caroli posted during Bookmas that I wanted to mention was the one where her mother picked her reads, because I read a recommendation from that video, The Charm School by Norman DeMille, who was a new author to me this year, and I gave it 4 stars. So I am looking forward to reading more books from him in 2026. I would like to restate some of my goals from my Bookish Goals video that I made last week. The first one is Storygraph goal will be lower this year. So last year's Storygraph goal was 350 books. I was able to reach that book by the middle of June when the mid-year book tag video went up. But by then I was pretty burnt out and I still had half a year to go. So this year, I don't think I'm going to read quite so many books. I think I'm going to bring my amount of books down from 350 to 245. Expectations from this channel. I will be doing shorter form book review videos for From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR. These are the books I have selected for the TBR that Kathleen and I are not reviewing for the podcast, because I have some books that I read on my own for the TBR list for Friends and Gilmore Girls TBR that I want to talk about, and those books will either get separate form videos or they will be mentioned in progress on these books will be mentioned in the entertainment wrap-up videos I do with Matt every other month. I will also be doing more standalone reviews for books on my TBR about books with disabled protagonists. I discovered a Bookstagrammer channel that was doing Disability December, where they were doing prompts for each week of December where they focused on different disabilities, and I went through the prompt list and picked books based on disabilities, and I will be reading those books in January and February to catch myself up on what I missed during the readathon. Spending. I will, when I go to Bull Moose to drop off book donations, I will ask for cash back instead of store credit, so that way I will have more time to read through all of the books that I own physically on my TBR before I buy anything new. And the cash will go into my vacation fund for the trip that I am saving money up for later in the year once my job at Vertical Harvest begins. My rereads to complete is the Harry Potter series. An author you won't be reading. I will not be completing a Fourth Wing series. I loved Fourth Wing, but I DNF'd Iron Flame twice. And I thought the writing was pretty bad in that book. I feel like Rebecca Yarros rushed to get that book done, so I do not think I am going to continue the series because of that. But I will still continue to read Rebecca Yaros's romance books, such as The Things We Leave Unfinished or Variations, which was her release from November 2024. Auto by authors. Emily Austen, Melissa de la Cruz, who is a new author to me in 2025. I read a Snow White retelling from her called Snow and Poison, and a Pride and Prejudice retelling last month for Christmas called Pride and Prejudice and Mistletoe. Sylvia Moreno Garcia, Allie Hazelwood, Emily Henry, Abby Jimenez, Taylor Jenkins Reid. Most anticipated 2026 releases. Some of them include Is This a Cry for Help by Emily R. Austen, Rings of Fate by Melissa de la Cruz, which is a modernization of The Princess Bride, Starshipped by Kat Sebastian, The Shippers by Catherine Center. Anticipated book to movie adaptations. People We Meet on Vacation, Regretting You, Reminders of Him, The Devil Wears Prada 2, The Housemaid, which I am seeing tonight, and Verity. So there are 3 books this year coming out there are 3 movies this year coming out that are based on books by Colleen Hoover, which I'm excited to see. I read Verity in October for Halloween, and I really loved it. And based on how her romances have gotten mixed reviews from me in the past, I was really surprised that I liked Verity. I gave Verity 4.5 stars. For her romances, all of the ratings have been mixed. I have read All Your Perfects, which was 3.5 stars. It Ends With Us, which was 2.5. I think that book series romanticizes abuse. Ugly Love, which was 3 stars. And Maybe Someday, which was 3 stars. And Without Merit, which was 2.5 stars. A popular book that I want to read. 2 series that I am continuing this year is Red Rising and This Woven Kingdom. And a series I'm going to give a shot to is Magnolia Parks, because it is so hyped up by all of the other booktubers I follow on BookTube. But I have heard that the author of Magnolia Parks has been getting a lot of backlash in the past couple of months. I have not watched the video on YouTube yet about said backlash. So I am interested to see if it will turn me off from reading more of her books, because the other book I have read by Jessica Hastings is called Never, which was a Peter Pan retelling that I read in 2024, and I gave that 2.5 stars. And then she came out with 2 new releases last year, which were The Conditions of Will, which came out in March, and The Time of Your Life, which is a 90s rom-com that came out in September. So I'm willing to give Magnolia Park series a try, and then if I don't like the first book, I will not continue. And before my iPad dies, I just figured I would switch documents over here and also share my my disappointing books of 2025. Number 1 is Great Big Beautiful Life. This was Emily Henry's new release from April, and I felt the writing style. Her writing is always good. The thing that I didn't like about this book is that the romance between Hayden and Alice was too underdeveloped, and you didn't get enough time to get to know them as people. It was too hyper-focused on the competition that was going on for them to write the article about the reclusive celebrity. I think Emily Henry leaned too far into Taylor Jenkins Reid's premise for The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo for this book. And I love The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I just didn't find the life of Margaret, who is the character that Hayden and Alice are interviewing in Great Big Beautiful Life, to be as interesting as Evelyn Hugo. So I bought that book, I unhauled it, and I gave it 2.5 stars. My second disappointing book of 2025 is Rebel Witch. This is the sequel to Heartless Hunter, which was a 5-star read for me in 2024, so I was highly anticipating this release, and I was disappointed in it because I just felt I could not connect to the main female character because I found her to be too whiny, and that really annoyed me. The third book on my disappointing list of 2025 is We Love You, Bunny. This was Mona Awad's follow-up to Bunny. Now, I read Bunny in 2024 and reread it again last year in preparation for the sequel coming out. I DNF'd it the first time and gave it 2.5 stars. After I read it all the way through, I bumped it up to 3.5 stars. This Bunny is set at a New England all-girls college in the MFA program, and it's basically Heathers, but instead of setting in a high school, it's set in a college MFA program. And We Love You, Bunny gives more background to the characters in Bunny, which was helpful because it helps you if you want to go back and read Bunny after learning more about these characters. That's what I think I'm going to do. But I think there were too many character POVs in this book. I think we probably only need to hear from 1 or 2 characters, not all of them. So that's what made this book overwhelmingly confusing for me. Number 4 is Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. This was Adrienne Young's release from last January. She also came out with another new release in September called Fallen City, which I have not yet read. For Sea of Unspoken Things, I thought the plot was not as engaging as in The Unmaking of June Farrow or Spells for Forgetting, which were her previous books that I have read and gave 4 and 5 stars to. The next book that was disappointing was Most Ardently, which is a queer retelling of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice did not need to have a sapphic romance retelling. I think it just should have been left as it was. The male character who is coming out as queer in this book was not likable at all. So Kathleen and I read this in June for Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR for Pride Month, and we gave it 2.5 stars. The next book I wanted to talk about is All Fours by Miranda July. I heard about this book from Carrie at Carrie Can Read and Jack at Jack Edwards, and a couple of other booktubers have talked about it too. Pardon me for saying this, but I don't understand why this book is so hyped up. I respectfully wish to share that I feel like the female main character in this book was insufferable to read from. I didn't really like her, and the plot was too sex-driven, which made the book not enjoyable for me. So I DNF'd it at 42% and gave it 2.5 stars. But I will certainly read anything else that Miranda July comes out with next, and also check out her short story collection that came out in 2014. The next book I wanted to talk about is The Academy by Elin Hildenbrand, which I do not have at the moment because Kathleen is borrowing it. We are reading it this year for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR because it is set at a boarding school that is similar to Chilton Academy. Now, I think it is very good that Elin Hildenbrand decided to pivot away from writing her Nantucket novels. I love all of her Nantucket novels for their setting and the characters and how messy their relationships can get, though sometimes I think in books like The Perfect Couple and The Castaways, there are too many character point of views to read from, and you should just focus more on like one or two characters, kind of like in We Love You Bunny with the multiple POVs. So as I was just saying, Elin Hildenbrand wrote this book with her daughter, Shelby Cunningham, which I think this was a great project for them to write about, and it was very helpful because her daughter goes to boarding school, so she was probably able to incorporate a lot of the boarding school experience into the book, which was great. And the school in this book reminded me of Chilton Academy. Our main character, Charlie, reminds me of Rory because she wants to be a journalist and she's on the school newspaper. And that's why I can connect to her, because when I was in high school and college, I was also on the school newspaper. The thing that was a turnoff for me in this book was all of the Gen Z slang. I think it would have been good if it had been used in like maybe 2 or 3 chapters, but it was overused throughout the whole book, and that took away from the enjoyment of the narrative. But overall, it was still a pretty good book. I gave it 3.75 stars, which is pretty close to 4. The next book is Merry Christmas, You Filthy Animal, which was Megan Quinn's release that came out on October 14th. This book is a romance book that focuses on a romance between Betty and Max. Betty is a new person in town. Max is the son of the owner of the local Christmas tree farm. I feel like I agree with all of the reviewers on Storygraph that said Betty's character was underdeveloped. I think the romance would have been a lot more believable between Max and Betty if you got more development about Betty's character. Megan Quinn's books are also super long. One problem that I have is that I don't think romance books need to be over 300 pages. Megan Quinn's books are great, but they are 550 pages each, and that's a little bit long for me. But I enjoyed the other Christmas book that she wrote called How My Neighbor Stole Christmas. And Kathleen and I are reading last year's release from earlier in the year called Till Summer Do Us Part, which takes place at a camp for couples who are getting divorced. My 9th book on this list is Hannah Bonham Young's release from September, which was called People Watching. I read this book in October or November, and I was really excited about it because the small town in it is very similar to Stars Hollow on Gilmore Girls, and the couple in it is reminiscent to Jess and Rory because they're both creative people. Jess is the character that is like Jess, his name is Milo, and he's a poet. He's a poet. And then the character that's similar to Rory, her name is Prue. She's a writer. And, like, she writes creative writing stories. I think this relationship in this book was too focused on sex. And it would have been nice if there had been more personal connection between them besides just physical connection. And the good thing about this book, besides the similar setting to Stars Hollow, was the Alzheimer's rep, because Prue is 24 years old. She has to take the semester off from college because her mother is recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's. This is a similar plotline to Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. And I love how Hannah Bonham Young and Abby Jimenez both wrote their plotlines about caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's. Having been through this with both of my parents taking care of my grandmas and when they had Alzheimer's, I was able to relate to these experiences of these characters. And I'm grateful to these authors for the way they depicted Alzheimer's in their books. I gave People Watching 2.5 stars. The Academy and People Watching are coming out with sequels next September, so I'm interested to see what goes next for these series, because I mean, the characters were likable in the Academy. In People Watching, I liked Prue, but I think Milo was too much of a playboy. And as I just said, as a couple, they were too sex focused. In the same vein, never mind. The next book I wanted to talk about is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This is the same author as the Love Life Farm series, and this is the first book in her new series that focuses on reinventing 90s rom-com movies into modern day romance books. So, this book focuses on the characters Lucy and Aiden. Lucy has Aiden has a radio show where people who have trouble in relationships call in to ask questions, and Lucy's daughter calls into the radio show looking for a date for her mom, just like in Sleepless in Seattle, where Meg Ryan's a radio host and Tom Hanks's character's son calls in to the radio station looking for a girlfriend for his dad. Maybe the reason why I didn't like this book is because I saw Sleepless in Seattle 3 years ago, and it's not my favorite rom-com. I just thought the plot of that movie was sort of boring. And I thought Aiden's character was a little bit underdeveloped, but I loved his relationship with Lucy. So I gave First Time Caller 3 stars. And the next book in this series, which is called Heartstrings, and Now Back to You, comes out on February 24th. And this is a reimagining of When Harry Met Sally that is based upon 2 weathermen that work in the same, that work at the news station that is in the same building as the radio station where Aiden has his romance podcast in the first book. So I'm excited to learn more about this couple. And I will also be doing a book to movie comparison for this book and the rom-com it is based on in honor of the death of the director Rob Reiner, who was murdered by his son before Christmas. The second to last book in my list is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood was so busy this year. I don't know how she manages to come out with so many books in the same year. She came in with Deep End in February, Problematic Summer Romance in May, and a Halloween book that was an Amazon original called Hot for Slayer, which came out in October for Halloween. And I feel like she came out with another book too, but I can't remember what it is. I think she came out with 4 books total this year. Deep End got 2.5 stars for me. I had to force myself through that book because, much like the couple in People Watching by Hannah Bonham Young, this main couple, Lucas and Scarlett, were too sex obsessed, and that was the main pinpoint of their relationship. That was the whole thing that started their relationship to begin with. Lucas starts off being the ex-boyfriend of Scarlett's best friend, and Scarlett's best friend goes to Scarlett at the party. Oh yeah, you guys would be a great couple because you have the same bedroom interests and stuff with BDSM and everything, and like that's where our relationship lacked because I wasn't into that. So basically this is a sports romance book. The 4th book Ali Hazelwood came out with this year was Mate, which was the sequel to Bride. So, out of the 3 books that I read by Ali Hazelwood this year, the book that I'm currently talking about, Deep End, got 2.5 stars. Mate got 4 stars. And Problematic Summer Romance got 4.5 stars. So, I listened to Deep End on audiobook, and the thing that was very interesting about that is the accent for Lucas. I thought the actor did really good with this. He's supposed to be Swedish, so I think he did really good with the Swedish accent, but I just didn't really find the relationship between Lucas and Scarlett to be that believable because, as I was just saying, similar to Jess and Milo and Prue's relationship in People Watching by Hannah Bonham Young, Scarlett and Lucas's relationship is basically focused on sex. And I wasn't a big fan of that. I thought they were both really well-written characters. And I really liked the mental health representation in this book too, because Scarlett is going to therapy to recover from being in an accident on the diving team so she can get ready to compete again in competitions for the next season. She's on the swimming team. She's a diver, and Lucas, the guy she dates, is a swimmer. So basically they know each other from sports because they go to the same swimming and diving competitions. And also he's the ex-boyfriend of her best friend whose name I think is Prue. So yeah, great mental health representation. I don't really know if Prue if Scarlett ever got over her issues that she was going to therapy for or not, or if she ever overcame her issues, because I only got 42% through this book before stopping. But the audiobook was very well narrated. I love all of Ali Hazelwood's books. I just don't think this book was necessarily for me because of the BDSM stuff. The last book on this list is 13 Ways for Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad. This was her first book that she ever came out with before Bunny ever came out. It's basically a book in the style of vignettes. Think of like The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. So the main character that this book focuses on, her name is Elizabeth, and she's overweight. the reason why this book is called 13 Ways of Looking at Fat Girl is because it's basically her talking about how she's overweight and how depressed she is because she's having trouble losing weight, and how her family and friends kind of bully her. I read this for the From Manhattan to Stars Hollow TBR because this main character, Elizabeth, is very similar to what Monica deals with in Friends in the flashback episodes when she's in high school and she's overweight and her family basically bullies her because she's fat. And the fat shaming of Monica is one thing I hate about Friends the least. I like about Friends the least because it even sort of continues a little bit. Because if you have seen the episode where they're watching the video from Chandler and Monica's prom, this is obviously when Rachel hasn't gotten her nose job yet, and Monica is still fat. So when they're watching the video, I guess her dad was having trouble with the video camera, so he has it zoomed in too closely. And then when they zoom out, you see that Monica is fat. And Joey says that some fat girl ate Monica. And then Monica sends something about the camera angle being off or something like that. And Chandler then says, how many cameras were actually on you? And then when you go to watch the flashback episodes, which are the one with all the Thanksgivings and the one with the flashbacks, well, in the one with the flashbacks, you really don't see so much of Chandler making fun of Monica for her weight. But in the one with all the Thanksgivings, you see how Chandler doesn't want to be left alone with Monica because Ross needs to go out somewhere or something like that. He's like, I don't want to be left alone with her fat sister. And then a year later, Monica loses all the weight. Now, I know that in these flashback episodes, Courtney Cox was wearing a fat suit to be Fat Monica. I'm aware of that because I've seen a post on Instagram that says, like, there was a question asked of all the Friends actors, what is their favorite episodes? And Courtney said that her favorite episodes were when she got to be Fat Monica. But my question was, so in the Thanksgiving episode where Chandler insults Monica, she's probably like, I don't know how fat she's supposed to be, but by the next year at Thanksgiving, she's really skinny. Like, she's wearing a skinny black dress. And I just had trouble suspending my disbelief that she lost that much amount of weight in that amount of time. But anyway, yeah, I thought in 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, Elizabeth was too whiny, and the book was too negative for me. I had to stop reading at 38% because I was getting sad and depressed, and I didn't want to be put in a reading slump. So as much as I loved the writing style of Mona Awad, I had to stop reading this book at the percentage just stated. So, were there any books that disappointed you this year? Sound off in the comments below. I will see you guys in a little bit for my next reading progress video.